When you hear the name Saladin, what comes to mind? For many, it's the image of a chivalrous knight, the magnanimous sultan who fought Richard the Lionheart, a figure of legend. But like all legends, the story is far more complex and fascinating than the myth. Who was the real Saladin? Let's journey back to the 12th century to uncover the man behind the icon. Our story doesn't begin in a grand palace, but in Tikrit, in modern-day Iraq, in the year 1137. Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, or Saladin as the West would come to know him, was born into a Kurdish military family. His early life wasn't one of destined greatness. He was reportedly a quiet, scholarly young man, more interested in religious studies than in warfare. He preferred studying the Quran to practicing with a sword. It's a surprising start for a man who would become one of history's greatest military commanders. His fate, however, was tied to the turbulent politics of the time. The Crusader states had been established in the Holy Land for decades, a thorn in the side of the Muslim world, which was itself fractured and divided. Saladin's uncle, Shirkuh, was a prominent general serving Nur al-Din, the powerful ruler of Syria. It was under their tutelage that Saladin's journey truly began. He was reluctant at first, but duty called. In his late 20s, he accompanied his uncle on a series of complex military campaigns in Egypt. These campaigns were a trial by fire. Egypt was a rich prize, but it was politically unstable and also coveted by the Crusaders. Through a whirlwind of battles, sieges, and political maneuvering, the young, bookish Saladin proved his mettle. He learned statecraft, military strategy, and the harsh realities of power. When his uncle Shirkuh died unexpectedly just 2 months after becoming the vizier of Egypt, Saladin, still in his early 30s, was chosen as his successor. Many saw him as young and inexperienced, someone they could easily manipulate. They were about to be proven very, very wrong. As the new ruler of Egypt, Saladin consolidated his power with remarkable speed and skill. He reformed the economy, strengthened the military, and established his own dynasty, the Ayyubids. But his ambition was much greater than just ruling Egypt. His ultimate goal, inherited from his mentor Nur al-Din, was the unification of the Muslim world and the expulsion of the Crusaders from Jerusalem. This wasn't just a political goal, it was a sacred mission, a jihad in its truest sense, a struggle to restore what he saw as rightful Islamic sovereignty. For the next decade, Saladin worked tirelessly to bring Syria, northern Iraq, and other territories under his control, often fighting against fellow Muslims to achieve this unity. This is a part of his story that the legend often omits. He was a pragmatist, a brilliant politician who knew that to face a common enemy, he first had to unite his own fractured house. He used diplomacy when he could and force when he had to, slowly but surely building a powerful empire that would finally encircle the Crusader kingdoms. By 1187, the stage was set. Saladin had assembled a massive, unified army. The Crusader states, in contrast, were internally divided and led by the arrogant and reckless Guy of Lusignan, the king of Jerusalem. Saladin cleverly lured the Crusader army away from their water sources and into the open, arid plains near the Sea of Galilee. The place was called the Horns of Hattin. It was a strategic master stroke. On a scorching July day, the Battle of Hattin commenced. Exhausted, dehydrated, and tormented by the heat, the Crusader knights were no match for Saladin's disciplined forces. The battle was a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders. Their army was annihilated, and for the first time, a large piece of the true cross, their most sacred relic, was captured. King Guy himself was taken prisoner. In a famous, or perhaps infamous, moment, Saladin offered the captured king a cup of iced water as a sign of hospitality. But when Guy passed the cup to the notorious Crusader lord, Reynold of Chatillon, a man despised for breaking truces and attacking pilgrim caravans, Saladin's demeanor changed. He made it clear the gesture of mercy did not extend to Reynold. For his past crimes, Reynold was executed, a stark reminder that Saladin's chivalry had its limits. With the main Crusader army destroyed, the path to Jerusalem was open. City after city surrendered to Saladin. And then he stood before the walls of the holy city itself. After a brief siege, Jerusalem surrendered on October 2, 1187. The moment the Muslim world had dreamed of for 88 years had finally arrived. Now, here is where the legend of Saladin's magnanimity was truly forged. When the first Crusaders had taken Jerusalem in 1099, they had mercilessly slaughtered its inhabitants, Muslims, and Jews alike in a city-wide massacre. The world braced for a similar revenge. But Saladin chose a different path. He forbade any killing or looting. He allowed the city's Christian inhabitants to ransom themselves for a small fee, and those who couldn't pay were, in many cases, allowed to leave anyway. He even provided guards to escort them safely to Christian-held territory. This act of mercy and clemency stood in stark contrast to the brutality of the First Crusade and earned him respect and admiration, even from his enemies. It cemented his reputation in Europe as a noble and chivalrous ruler. The fall of Jerusalem sent shock waves through Europe and triggered the Third Crusade, led by the most powerful kings of Christendom, including the legendary Richard the Lionheart of England. The clash between Saladin and Richard is the stuff of epic tales. For 2 years, these two brilliant commanders, two titans of their age, battled for control of the Holy Land. They fought fiercely at Acre, at Arsuf, and Jaffa. They were adversaries, but they also developed a mutual respect. Stories abound of them exchanging gifts, of Saladin sending his own doctors to treat a sick Richard, and even offering him fresh fruit and snow from the mountains to cool his fever. While some of these tales might be exaggerated, they speak to a shared code of conduct between these two warrior kings. In the end, neither could achieve a decisive victory. Richard could not retake Jerusalem, and Saladin could not drive the Crusaders from the coast entirely. Exhausted, and with pressing matters at home, Richard negotiated the Treaty of Jaffa with Saladin in 1192. The treaty left the coastal cities in Crusader hands, but affirmed Muslim control over Jerusalem, while also guaranteeing safe passage for non-Christian pilgrims to visit the holy sites. It was a pragmatic compromise. Just a few months after Richard departed, in March 1193, Saladin fell ill with a fever and died in his beloved Damascus. He was only 55 years old. When his treasury was opened to pay for his funeral, his advisors were shocked. The great Sultan, ruler of a vast empire, had given away almost all of his personal wealth to his subjects and to charity. There wasn't even enough money left to pay for a proper burial. He died as he had lived, not as a king hoarding wealth, but as a devout servant of his faith. So, who was Saladin? He was a devoted scholar who became a military genius. A reluctant politician who forged an empire. He was a unifier, sometimes ruthless, who fought fellow Muslims to achieve his vision of a united front. He was a devout jihadist who, at the moment of his greatest triumph in Jerusalem, showed incredible mercy and restraint. He was both a product of his violent times and, in many ways, a man far ahead of them. The legend of Saladin, the chivalrous knight, is powerful, but the reality of Salah al-Din, the Kurdish boy from Tikrit, who united a people and changed the course of history, is far more compelling. He was a man of deep faith, strategic brilliance, and a surprising capacity for both ruthlessness and mercy. And that complexity is what makes him one of the most enduring and fascinating figures not just in Muslim history, but in the history of the world. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most incredible stories. See you next time.